2025 is going to be a big year in the horror genre. I have been reading a crap load of horror this past year. It was one of the things that helped to pull me out of my reading slump. I have been binging everything horror. I have been looking into new authors and new subject matters within the genre itself. And there are a few coming out in 2025 that I am super excited to add to my TBR list. Even though this is supposed to be the year where I read my TBR shelves, I'll find balance somehow, some way. Let me look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 11 new horror books that you should maybe add to your TBR, because they are certainly going on mine. And I figured 11's a great odd number. Okay, whatever. The first book is Porcelain by Jessie Sprague, or Sprague. It just came out December 10th of 2024. This is about her past is bathed in blood, but without trustworthy memories to guide her, her future may be equally drenched in red. 10 years ago, Gabrielle woke up from a blackout covered in blood next to her brutally murdered parents. Certain that her porcelain doll was the killer, she nevertheless clung to it because it was only protecting her. Wasn't it? After years of therapy, living in institutions, and lots of medication, Gabrielle has made enough progress to enroll at the University of Washington. She just wants to be normal. A doll is just a doll, after all. But when she's sexually pressured at a date's house, she blacks out again and wakes up next to her date's bloody corpse, with her doll. Worse, her brother's new boyfriend is the homicide detective on the case. Despite her brother's faith in her, she's left seeing two possibilities. Either she's a killer or her doll is. With her past catching up to her, Gabrielle is determined to find answers. If she doesn't discover the truth, the only people she loves and the only ones who love her could be the next victims. She'll do whatever she has to, even if that means going to jail for murder, to save them. This sounds really good and creepy. I think that there is a lot to be said for haunted, creepy-ass dolls. It's very reminiscent of 80s horror, Chucky doll, and what was that other one? The Conjuring, the haunted, possessed doll. That's what that reminds me of. Next, At Dark, I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. This comes out on January 28th. If you are reading this, you've likely thought that the world would be a better place without you. A single line of text glowing in the darkness of the internet, written by Ashley Lutton, who is often thought the same, and worse, in the years since his wife died and his young son disappeared. But the peace of the grave is not for him. It is for those he can help. Ashley has constructed a peculiar ritual for those whose desire to die is at war with their yearning to live a better life. Struggling to overcome his endless grief, one night Ashley finds a connection with Jinx, a potential candidate for Ashley's next ritual, who spins a tale both revolting and fascinating. Thus begins a relationship that traps the two men in an ever-tightening spiral of painful revelations where long-hidden secrets are dragged, kicking and screaming, into the light. Only through pain can we find healing. Only through death can we find new life. I actually have not read from Eric LaRocca before, so I think that this one sounds very interesting, and the cover, it looks very dark and disturbing. Next is At the Bottom of the Garden, a novel by Camilla Bruce. This also comes out on January 28th. Clara Woods is a killer, and perfectly fine with it too. So what if she takes a couple of lives to make her own a little bit better? At the bottom of her garden is a flower bed, long overgrown, where her late husband rests in peace, or so she always thought. Then the girls arrive. Lily and Violet are her nieces, recently orphaned after their affluent parents died on an ill-fated anniversary trip. In accordance with their parents' will, the sisters are to go to their closest relative, who happens to be Clara. Despite having no interest in children, Clara agrees to take them, hoping to get her hands on some of the girls' assets. not only to bolster their dwindling fortune, but also to establish what she hopes will be her legacy, a line of diamond jewelry. There's only one problem. Violet can see the dead man at the bottom of the garden. She can see all of Clara's ghosts and call them back into existence. Soon Clara is plagued by her victims and at war with the gifted girls in her care. Lily and Violet have become a liability, and they know far more than they should. This sounds like a great ghost story. The cover shows such a creepy haunted house vibe. I think covers are so important when it comes to horror books because they really tell a story and initiate that sense of foreboding or terror. I think a lot of people are very visual in that respect, and so if they can visualize what the scene is that they're going into, definitely helps set that sense of terror. Next, I have Something in the Walls, a novel by Daisy Pierce. This comes out on February 25th. Newly minted child psychologist Mina has little experience in a field where the first people called are experts. She's been able to get her feet wet. Instead, she aimlessly spends her days stuck in the stifling heat wave sweeping across Britain and anxiously contemplating her upcoming marriage to careful, precise researcher Oscar. The only reprieve from her small, close world is attending the local bereavement group to mourn her brother's death from years ago. That is, until she meets journalist Sam Hunter at the grief group one day and he has a proposition for her. Alice Weber is a 13-year-old girl who claims she's being haunted by a witch. Living with her family in their crowded home in the remote village of Bannathel, Alice's symptoms are increasingly disturbing and money is tight. Taking this job will give Mina some experience. Sam will get the scoop of a lifetime, and Alice will get better. Mina is sure of it. But instead of improving, Alice's behavior becomes increasingly inexplicable and intense. The town of Bannathel has a deep history of superstition and witchcraft. They believe there is evil in the world. They believe there are ways of dealing with it. And they don't expect outsiders to understand. As Mina races to uncover the truth behind Alice's condition, the dark cracks of Bannathel begin to show. Mina is desperate to understand how deep their sinister traditions go and how her own past may be the biggest threat of all. Witchcraft, dark secrets, in a small town vibes. That sounds pretty good. Next I have The Unworthy, a novel by Augustina Bastarrica, translated by Sarah Moses. This is the same author that wrote Tender is the Flesh, which is also on my TBR because I have not read that one yet, but I really do want to. From her cell in a mysterious convent, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find. Discarded ink, dirt, and even her own blood. A lower member of the sacred sisterhood, deemed an unworthy, she dreams of ascending the ranks to the enlightened at the center of the convent and of pleasing the foreboding superior sister. Outside, the world is plagued by catastrophe. Cities are submerged underwater, electricity and the internet are non-existent, and bands of survivors fight and forage in a cruel, barren landscape. Inside, the narrator is controlled, punished, but safe. When a stranger makes her way past the convent walls, joining the ranks of the unworthy, she forces the narrator to consider her long-buried past and what she may be overlooking about the enlightened. As the two women grow closer, the narrator is increasingly haunted by questions about her own past, the environmental future, and her present life inside the convent. How did she get to the sacred sisterhood? Why can't she remember her life before? And what really happens when a woman is chosen as one of the enlightened? A searing dystopian tale about climate crisis, ideological extremism, and the tidal pool of our most violent exploitative instincts. This is another unforgettable novel but from a master of feminist horror. It sounds really good, kind of claustrophobic, full of dread and the unknown. I do feel that so used to being exposed to everything at a moment's notice that living in the dark, being shut off from everything, I think that sense really plays a big part in horror, that isolation. That is, I don't think I mentioned, but that is March 4th. Next, Blood on Her Tongue, a novel by Joanna Van Veen. This comes out on March 25th. Netherlands, 1887. Lucy's twin sister Sarah is unwell. She refuses to eat, mumbles nonsensically, and is increasingly obsessed with the centuries-old corpse recently discovered on her husband's grand estate. The doctor has diagnosed her with temporary insanity caused by a fever of the brain. To protect her twin from a terrible fate in a lunatic asylum, Lucy must unravel the mystery surrounding her sister's condition. But it's clear her twin is hiding something. Then again, Lucy is harboring secrets of her own, too. Then the worst happens. Sarah's behavior takes a turn for the strange. She becomes angry and hungry. Lucy soon comes to suspect that something is trying to possess her beloved sister. Or is it madness? As Sarah changes before her very eyes, Lucy must reckon with the dark, monstrous truth, or risk losing her forever. So this sounds like it deals with possession, and that always walks that fine line with mental illness. I think that is right up my alley. I love a possession story. It also classifies it under vampire horror. So there is that. Next, I have Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes. This releases on April 8th, and this is the same author who wrote Ghost Ship. Hallie is on the run from an interplanetary political scandal that has put a huge target on her back. She heads for what seems like the perfect place to lay low, a gigantic space barge storing the cryogenically frozen bodies of Earth's most fortunate citizens from more than a century ago. The cryo program created by trillionaire tech genius Zale Winfield is long defunct, and the AI hologram hosts, ghoulishly created in the likeness of Winfield's 3 adult children, are glitchy. The ship feels like a crypt, and the isolation gets to Hallie almost immediately. She starts to see figures crawling in the hallways, and there's constant scraping, slithering, and rattling echoing in the vents. It's not long before Hallie realizes she may have gotten herself trapped in an even more dangerous situation than the one she was running from. Again, isolation, space, the scratching and the creepy crawly things in the silence sounds up my alley. It sounds really freaking good. And I've liked her other stories. Actually, I did not read the newest one. What the heck was that one called? I can't remember, but I haven't read that one. I did read Ghost Ship. I thought that was really well done and creepy. I wouldn't know if it would say it was scary. It was more bloody horror. Next, I have When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This releases on April 22nd. Nat Cassidy's other books are high up on my TBR, in particular Mary, as well as Nestlings. I've heard some really great feedback on those. I hope to read those actually before this one comes out. This one it says, one night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, Jess slowly comes to a horrifying understanding of the butchery that follows them. The boy can turn his every fear into a reality, and when the wolf finally comes home, no one will be spared. That sounds like in the vein of Stephen King, bringing your greatest fears to reality. That sounds really good. 3 more. Next we have The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. This releases on April 29th. 5 high school friends are bonded with an oath to protect one another no matter what. Then, on a camping trip in the middle of the forest, they find something extraordinary, a mysterious staircase to nowhere. One friend walks up and never comes back down. Then the staircase disappears. 20 years later, the staircase has reappeared. Now the group returns to find the lost boy and what lies beyond the staircase in the woods. I like when authors write about friend groups that experience something horrific and then they go their separate ways and then come back again years later to re-experience the same tragic or horrific thing that happened. It puts a new perspective on what happened. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Next we have The Starving Saints, a novel by Caitlin Starling. This releases on May 20th. And this is the same author that wrote The Death of Jane Lawrence, which I actually did not like at all. I would even go as far as saying that I hated this book. I'm pretty sure it was on my list of top 5 worst books I've ever read. I'm taking a leap of faith putting this on the list because of the synopsis. So I think that what she did right in that first book was the atmospheric gothic horror scene setting. She did pretty good at that. It was actually the plot and the characters that just fell really, really short for me. Second time's the charm. Amar Castle has been under the siege for 6 months. Food is running low and there has been no sign of rescue. But just as survivors consider deliberately thinning their number, the castle stores are replenished. The sick are healed, and the divine figures of the Constant Lady and her saints have arrived, despite the barricaded gates, offering succor in return for adoration. Soon the entire castle is under the sway of their saviors, partaking in intoxicating feasts of terrible origin. The war hero Sir Voin gives her allegiance to the Constant Lady. Faucine, a disorganized, paranoid nun-turned-sorceress, races to unravel the mystery of these new visitors and exonerate her experiments as their source. And in the bowels of the castle, a serving girl, Trela, is torn between her thirst for a secret vengeance against Voin and the desperate need to escape from the horrors that are unfolding within Amar's walls. As the castle descends into Bacchian madness, forgetting the massed army behind its walls in favor of hedonistic ecstasy, these 3 women are the only ones to still see their situation for what it is, but they are not immune from the temptations of the castle's new masters or each other, and their shifting alliances and entangled pasts bring violence to the surface. To save the castle and themselves will take a reimagining of who they are and a reorganization of the very world itself. So when I read this, it reminded me of the book that I'm reading now, which is Between Two Fires, in which there is saints, angels, devils, this kind of battleground on earth between good and evil. And that's kind of what this sounded like, because the Constant Lady and her saints who bring about these hedonistic ways within this castle. So I go into this one with trepidation, but a sliver of hope. Okay, the last one, My Ex, the Antichrist by Craig diLouie. This releases on July 1st. Craig diLouie wrote Suffer the Children and episode 13. Episode 13 I read and I thought was really good and scary. I did not enjoy the ending. It was just a little bit over the top for me, and it was not scary. It was just weird. Very, very weird. Though the middle of the book was creepy as hell. This says, 1998, Lily Lawler and Drake Morgan form a punk band. Drake inspires faith in some, fear in others. Lily is a believer. 1999, a battle of the bands ends in a shocking death and a riot that claims the lives of 3 teenagers. 2009, at the height of her stardom, Lily walks into a police station and confesses to murder. Now, the band has refused to talk to the press about the night of the riot, Lily's confession, or anything else. It's been over a decade, but Lily has finally agreed to an interview, and the band is following her lead. What follows is a story of prophecy, death, and apocalypse. A story about love and lost love. A story about the Antichrist. Maybe it's all true. Maybe none of it is. Either way, this is their story, and they're sticking to it. I love movies about the Antichrist, like The Omen, for example, and stories that follow that lead, so this was an obvious one to add to the list. I reserve some caution again because of the way the episode 13 ended and its weirdness, its over-the-topness, that this one will try to pull the same naughty tricks, but we will see. It looks pretty dang good. So that's my list. Those are 11 books, and I'm sure that I have missed some that are coming out next year. So if you are aware of any that I didn't mention and they look really good to you or sound like something I might like, please list them in the comments. Let me know. I want to bulk up horror TBR list. So are any of these on your radar? I would love to know. Let's chat about all things horror in the year 2025. That's it for now. I will see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.